from how we walk in the world to how we speak to each other, to what we create as our brands or, with other organizations. Like, it has to be inclusive of not just what other people need and what they want, but how can we make people feel seen and heard? That, to me, has everything to do with consideration, and consideration is kindness.
Welcome to the Kindness Is podcast, where we take a deep dive into the true meaning of kindness. I'm your host, Kaitlin Johnstone, the co-founder of Kind Cotton. Let's dive in.
Wake up.
At Kind Cotton, we talk about representation all the time. We want to ensure that all children are seeing themselves in the books that they read, because it is so important. It's important in order to feel loved and seen and develop a sense of self and positive self-identity. The list goes on and on and on as to why it is so important for children to see themselves in books. My guest this week talks about her experience growing up and what it was like for her and her family to never see themselves in greeting cards. And this is an area that I never had to think about. I go to the store, I can find a card that looks like me or my mom or my dad. I can find a card that is filled with love and all of the things that I want to say to my partner. I have the luxury and the privilege of never having to think about the fact that I can't find something that resonates deeply with those who I love. And our guest this week has a solution to all of that, along with taking us on a journey of incredible insight into what kindness means to her. Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Kindness Is podcast. I'm so excited about today. Funny, quick story. My guest, Tahira, we actually spoke, oh my goodness, Tahira, what was it? Like 2 months ago at this point.
2 months.
Yeah, and we were supposed to have an episode come out actually in September. And then on my part, I went to edit the episode, realized that I had completely lost all of our footage. So we are here again, but I am excited about that because I get to spend a little bit more time with you, in community with you, and just chat about all things you, all things your business. Before I get started, I just want to share with you that Tahira Benjamin launched the Unwritten in 2022 to center and celebrate folks of color through paper goods. Previously based in Los Angeles, Paris, and now Bangkok, Tahira is a creative entrepreneur with a global perspective, which is evident in her work at Beyond Your Feed Media, a marketing consulting agency that she founded in 2018. Thank you for being here again.
Yes, thank you for having me again. I'm all for having more time, and now we get to see each other, so that's awesome.
Exactly. All about connection, community. I'm happy that we get to chat again. And I'm so happy that we finally get to share with all of our listeners exactly who you are and what you do. So I appreciate you taking the time.
Well, thank you for having me and for creating such an amazing platform and doing everything that you do. It honestly feels so good to know that there are other people in the world that just want to spread love and healing and the right things. So you're one of those people, and I really appreciate what you've created here with Kind Cotton and your podcast.
Thank you. That means so much to me. And I think you hit the nail on the head with healing. Oh my goodness, that is a word that I have been really leaning into lately because I feel as though there has just been so much collective trauma, particularly in the past few years, that healing is something that I've really been trying to kind of develop my own definition around, try to focus on almost daily if I have the time to. And that word just really struck me right now. So I'm happy you mentioned it.
It just, as I've grown in age, in experiences, in business, healing is a continuum that I've realized we're all in different parts of our journeys with, but it really is what we all, I feel, come into the physical realm for as people, and in some way or another, we're healing some part of ourselves and we're discovering what that is every day. So I know it's been a huge theme in my life, and I know I can only imagine for what you do, of course. I mean, from going from the classroom where you're responsible for all of the growth and development of so many young minds to what you're doing now. I mean, I feel like the work that you have done your entire career, even though it's so different from teaching, it's all been about healing. So, yeah.
It is. Yeah, for sure. Oh, so tell us a little bit about your journey, particularly your journey with the Unwritten, and what inspired you to create these beautiful, beautiful. I have some of my cards right here, and I know Tahira is going to show you some of her incredible paper goods. Tell us the backstory. What inspired you to create the Unwritten?
Wow. Where do we begin? I think there was something that clicked, I guess now 2 years ago. And just being someone, I mean, I'm a consumer, I'm always analyzing things as a marketer for my clients, for myself. But more so as a consumer, I realized from a really young age. I mean, I think you realize this when you are Black or brown or some group that has been marginalized in some way, you recognize when there has not been space made for you. And it's something that as I've grown and, helped other businesses to grow, I am so cognizant of what am I really doing to be part of the solution instead of contribute to the problem. So I grew up with a mom who was always giving me cards and encouraging me to write and read, but writing really became a healing practice for me in my adolescence. And cards were just like these mementos that I could look back on. And if I was having a bad day or just far from home, it's like you have that person with you physically there. So I stumbled upon this bag of cards that I had when I was moving out of my apartment. Well, this actually happened like after, I guess, but it all kind of made sense as why I'm doing what I'm doing with the Unwritten. So I was moving out of my apartment in Paris, and this was quite recent. This was maybe June of this year. And I saw this bag of cards and I was like, oh, and I had kind of gone through it a couple months before, but it all kind of clicked to me like how healing it is to have these memories. And then I also noticed, though, that there's so few cards that resonate with me in terms of the illustrations or, what's physically depicted, like what's written from the person, the people that I love, that always resonates. But what the company creating the card, what was there was never someone who looked like me, or sure, it could be a cute message, and I love you so much or whatever. My mom she's a pro at finding these really gorgeous cards. And I noticed, I think growing up, that anytime she was looking for cards for our loved ones, there was nothing, or she would really struggle. I won't say there was nothing, because there's the mahogany collection from Hallmark, and that's really the only thing that we had to show people who looked like us. And even some of like the cultural references that resonated, the phrases or music themes that, just resonate with Black folks that come from, I mean, for my family, the Caribbean, but then I was born in America. So, I'm in between two cultures there. But anyway, I just realized that we needed to have something that was made specially for us in that realm, especially right now where, I mean, collectively, we just, all of us, not just Black or brown folks, but us as a collective, I feel like we're so unwell because of the lack of support that we get in mental health care. During our development in education, I think all of those things are kind of intersectional. So I recognized that there was an opportunity to create something where people who look like me and the folks that I love in my life, I have folks who are hijabi, folks who are seek. I mean, I've never seen even a queer friendly card to my knowledge, like in recent history. Like I literally went to Target yesterday and walked down the card aisle, and it's so hard to find things for folks that just say, hey, I see you, this is who you are. That marginalized identity. I mean, sure, people can say not everything has to be about who we are in terms of our race or who we love, but I mean, why not make it, if we're proud of that, why not celebrate it? So I wanted to find a way to celebrate it, and it felt like, given how important writing and cards are for me, I wanted to create something beautiful that everyone can enjoy and give, even if you don't look like the people that are on the cards. Even if you're not queer or Black or brown or hijabi, you likely know someone who is. And that's exactly why it's so important for me to have created the Unwritten.
Yeah, that's so beautiful and so important. And it goes back to the sentiment that if you love someone, it's important to love them by seeing exactly who they are and valuing them for who they are, and letting them know that they are seen and loved and valued. And something as simple as a card coming from a straight passing white cis woman may seem, oh, it's so like irrelevant, but that's also coming from someone who has seen myself in everything growing up.
Mm.
Right? I've seen myself in the movies, I've seen myself in the shows, in many identities that I hold, I have seen myself. And that's what I think is that tricky part that we, as particularly white people, don't understand, is that we need to be seeing others as well in their fullness, and celebrating them in their fullness and understanding them. And it's just a simple yet impactful, powerful thing that you were doing.
Well, thank you for that. And yeah, exactly what you hit the nail on the head. Um, just it's hard to know what you don't know. I will say that. So for a lot of white people, I think there's even this shock, like, oh wow, I didn't recognize that so many other people don't have the luxury of feeling seen. So I think by creating the Unwritten, it gives a lot of white folks like you the opportunity to step up and say, yeah, I get it now, and I want to be part of making people feel seen and heard and loved and celebrated. And I think that is healing. That is super healing, and especially for our mental health. I mean, writing is such a healing practice for me, and I know it is for a lot of people. Um, so even having something beautiful that you feel reflected in, like that is even in itself, without even before your pen touches the paper, I think it can really affect how, in a positive way, it can affect how you approach life and how you feel day to day. So that's the goal. And um, it's been a very, very interesting journey so far, but I think I really love that I've been able to work with an illustrator. I've worked with one so far. I hope to work with more illustrators of color, but even in that aspect, it's all about working and celebrating and supporting folks of color, from the design lab to the final product.
Yeah, and another thing that I almost forgot about that we talked about last time that I found so powerful behind everything that you were doing is that you don't only have these cards, but you have journals as well. And along with those journals, you were doing these really thought-provoking, incredible journal prompts for people on TikTok, it was, I believe, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And I'm wondering if A, you are going to continue with that. B, if you have aspirations to almost take those prompts into something more, like I believe you mentioned perhaps a journal with prompts in them in the future. Just tell me everything about that, because I was very inspired by the fact that you were kind of sitting right there with people along their writing journey.
Yeah. So I mean, I feel like I'm just learning about the writing community that's been growing for years online. Um, I had never really directly tapped into the journaling of TikTok and Instagram communities, but once I saw that prompts were in high demand and something that people just really wanted and felt like it helped their writing practice, then I felt like, okay, of course, it makes sense for us to create content around prompts and giving people things that, it's great to think about memories. And, I think we can all point to prompts that we've seen that make us reflect, but to really pinpoint things that have to do with bettering our mental health and healing, that was really my goal and because I know that it's something that so many of us need. So from a manufacturing perspective, it's been a little tricky. Of course, like pinpointing who to work with to create the journal on in lieu of having a journal that has prompts in it already. That's where we decided to offer some additional help. And I mean, the goal would be, of course, to make it all one pretty package, but there are also people who, I mean, for me, sometimes I just grab my journal just to write a list. So I want to give people flexibility with how they can use their journal. We are looking to develop one that will specifically have writing prompts and even affirmations, but the longer term goal is that that will even be a separate platform that can be accessed digitally through an app. So if you're more so a person who prefers to have things on your phone, your tablet, and you're not really a writer and don't, pen and paper type of way, everyone's typing away these days. So we are thinking about, and I started to work a bit with a front end developer to get the logistics of what an app could look like for the Unwritten. And we really want it to be kind of a community platform offering not just these writing prompts, but even support from real healthcare professionals who can provide medical, not, personalized advice, of course, but some more support for folks. And that's what our digital platform, we hope, and it really just depends on the success of everything. Everything is about funding these days, unfortunately. I mean, I guess it always has been, but especially as a small Black owned business, that's always the case. We're always kind of struggling to find funding to launch our projects, but that's one that I really hope we will be able to develop within the next couple years, especially for more mental health support.
I love that. I think that that's beyond needed right now. And I think it goes back to what we were saying in the beginning, right? About healing. And I didn't quite recognize how intertwined everything is with what you were doing. But it's so important, especially to kind of break down some barriers and create more access points for people. I think that would be really special and amazing. And I want to know, normally I would ask this at the end, and I have some other questions to ask you.
Yeah.
Know right here and now, while we have everyone captively listening to what it is that you are doing, what it is that you are looking to do in the future, how can people support you and support your mission right now with the Unwritten?
I mean, the holidays are coming up.
Yes.
School is back in session. I just can't think of a better time to gift journals and greeting cards, and going to shop the Unwritten or shopunwritten.com. We're at Shop the Unwritten on Instagram and Facebook and TikTok. But shopunwritten.com and placing an order either for yourself or for a loved one. We do have affirmation journals coming out, or not affirmation journals. This one will be gratitude journals, excuse me. But yeah, that spreading the word, buying for yourself, for your friends, that's the only way that we can grow. And it would honestly just mean so much. And I genuinely just hope that it can be an additive to everyone's lives.
Yeah. Go out, support, follow, share, like purchase something, because you do have someone in your life who would feel loved by receiving something from you. And I think that's what it's about, is that it's all built with so much love at the core, which is what makes it all so beautiful.
Thank you.
Not to fully shift gears, but you brought up living in a lot of different spaces. And so Tahira and I initially connected over our work with Here for the Kids. Here for the Kids is this incredible grassroots movement to ban fossil fuels and ban guns and implement a buyback program here in the US. And you have a really interesting story surrounding your connection with the US. And I was hoping that you would share with our listeners what your journey has been.
Sure. I am a first generation American, and my family's from the Caribbean. So we spent a lot of, I spent summers traveling, seeing family. I was just raised to recognize that the world is big. And there are quite a few places that you can live outside of the US, that the US is not the center of the world. And it doesn't have to be if you don't want it to be. I think I was about 16 years old when Sandy Hook happened. And I remember listening to the address that President Obama made. And I thought to myself, if nothing happens, if they don't ban guns, if they don't make a very drastic change that shows that they're serious about, saving the lives of innocent people and children, then it's never going to get better. It's only going to get worse. And I don't think I would be able to live in the United States. And I was saying that to myself as a 16-year-old. I had already begged my parents at about 13 to send me to boarding school in the UK, just because I just love, beyond not feeling safe here, I love travel. I love to discover new places. And just the experiences that you can have they're with you forever. So, but I just remember this very chilling feeling washing over me when I was watching that address about Sandy Hook, and, he was crying and I was crying because I was so scared.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard. It's so hard to even talk about now.
Mm-hmm.
As someone who has cousins who are young, and it does feel there's some guilt, I guess, because you leave behind the people that you love for your own safety and your own mental health. So I didn't think I was going to get emotional about that, but it's very real. And it just feels like yesterday when I was watching and thinking, I definitely would not be able to send a kid to school in this country. And I was 16. What business does a 16-year-old have thinking about what kind of life their kids are going to have, But that's America. And I think for me, it became very clear that I was going to take my first opportunity out. And that came in 2020 when I moved to Paris. And I had no idea when 2020 started. The pandemic was happening. I was living in LA. I was quite happy there, but I also had moments where I thought, oh, this city is, how do you live here? How do you live here if you're not making a certain amount of money? And even the people who would tell me that they're lawyers or doctors, they were also having second jobs. So an opportunity just came, and I joined a master's program and decided to move. And yeah, it's been 3 years and going on the next one now, as I still haven't moved back and I don't plan to. So yeah, it's an emotional story that it still clearly affects me.
I appreciate you sharing that and your vulnerability behind it, because I feel it so deeply.
Yeah.
Particularly being a mom and knowing that there are people who want to fight so badly for other people's children provides me with some hope in a time when a lot of us are feeling hopeless. And I want to reiterate that it's very intentional that we are feeling hopeless and we don't need to. And there has also been a lot of beauty in finding community with folks like you, because I think that's what we need as Americans going forward. I think we need to know that we need to make these changes and we need to be the ones to say enough is enough. And these are the things we can do going forward. And I'm also so sorry that as a child, you had to be traumatized in that way. That was
Yeah.
my first year going into teaching. I was student teaching at the time, and all I saw every day over and over were the children in my 2 classrooms at the time. And all I could think about was, what am I going to do to save these children? And here we are in 2023, and we're still talking about this. So I fully understand. I mean, there's not a day that goes by that I'm not up at night Googling where I could move to. And with that does come a whole slew of things that we could have a whole nother podcast about, because it comes with immense privilege. It comes with incredible guilt. It comes with all of these things. And I know that I am going to put forth every single effort that I can put forth through Here for the Kids, through gun advocacy, before I make that decision.
Absolutely. And I think it's having grown quite a sizable now community of friends outside of the US who are also American and have also left. It's definitely the number one thing that, everyone says, like, aside from the cost of living, which is astronomical, safety is such a huge concern. We actually feel safer in other countries that we don't know the native tongue, which for me is insanity. I mean, just from a survival perspective, luckily I moved to France knowing French and have only gotten stronger. And, to the point where I'm able to work with a French client. But just being there and feeling like this is my sigh of relief, like another country that has colonized countries with people that look like me and has, again, kind of like a racial caste system. Like, I'm escaping the United States to go to yet another country that still is problematic and still is dangerous in a lot of ways, but yet physically I feel safer. That has to be one of the biggest failures of this country. I think, how is it that we don't feel safe here? And I think for the folks who maybe think that people like Kaitlin and I, you and I, are being dramatic when we say those types of things, I really empathize with how deep the brainwashing has been to make people think that this is the greatest country on earth just because we said it is. But then, yeah, the guilt, the distance, the just being alone in a foreign place. I mean, it's not something that people tell you or give you a guidebook on, like, okay, this is how you're going to feel and this is what you should do. You're learning so much every day. So I say that as someone, yeah, with a lot of privilege, but I just want to do everything that I can to, I mean, if there are other people listening who are considering and in the process of doing that, I'm here to support. I just want people to really understand, though, that it goes so much deeper than just the guns. It's also the military. And as I've left the US, I've realized how global that is, that really you can go anywhere, but the influence is still there. It's far reaching. And that's just something that we all should really think about. And now is the best time. I mean, it's always been a good time to talk about how we stop this, but we really have to look at it as our duty to speak out about, especially how our tax dollars are being allocated and supporting the death and destruction everywhere and not just in this country.
No, it's such an important It's such an important discussion to have, and it's such an important thing to be behind. And I just hope that, I don't know, my hope every day, I know that I can be a broken record, and I'm known as the person who is just talking all things social justice every single day, and all things banning guns, and all things inclusive education. And people are like, oh, they must be like, Kaitlin, when is enough enough? However, if I can just move the needle a little bit with one person every day, that is something. And I want anyone to recognize that, because you don't need a platform, and you don't need thousands of followers, and you don't need all of these things to make your voice heard, because you can make your voice heard within your circles of influence and your family and your friends. And these conversations are conversations that are never going to go away, simply
Mhm.
because we either turn an eye to them and say that they are not happening and we're naive about them, or we wish them away, right? They're only going to go away with collective action and advocacy. And I am just grateful to be in community with you. And
Likewise.
yeah, I think this is an important time to ask you, as I do every single time with all of my guests. We've kind of talked about this underlying theme of what kindness is throughout this, right? We've touched upon representation with the work that you do with the Unwritten. We've talked upon advocacy. We've talked about all of these things. But if you had one way of defining what kindness should look like to you, what would it be?
But just being a considerate person. That's really what it stems from. Consideration is one of those things that um, it just feels like it's lacking in the world in so many ways, in interpersonal relationships. I mean, there's even a study that comes up. It's not comes up quite a bit, but it's quite a new study, just about like how white people don't get out of the way when they see Black people uh, walking. And I saw a TikTok of an Asian American woman. It went viral a couple days ago, and that was exactly what happened in it. She got completely shouldered by a white woman in New York City. So I just feel like it from how we walk in the world to how we speak to each other, to what we create as our brands or, with other organizations, like it has to be inclusive of not just what other people need and what they want, but how can we make people feel seen and heard? That to me has everything to do with consideration, and consideration is kindness.
Hmm. I love that. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you
Yeah.
for all the things that you do. Thank you for being here for round two.
I just wanted to
Oh,
add one more thing. When you said that people may think you're a broken record, having moved to now a country outside of the West, so to speak, I mean, it quite literally is an southeastern country. I mean, floods are something that is rampant, and this rainy season has been extremely hard. And it's been really tough the times that I haven't been there. But I mean, I'm seeing friends share about the flooding, and now living every day wearing a mask, just for air pollution, really, yeah, for COVID too, but mostly for air pollution. I will say, yeah, it's inescapable what is happening to us. Um, Whether we think we can turn a blind eye to it or not, we absolutely cannot. It doesn't matter how many seasons of Love is Blind we have to watch or Real Housewives. The earth is screaming at us that we need to do something about the way that we're living. And especially the way that we treat each other has a lot to do with it. Clearly, fossil fuels, overproduction, exploitation, all of these things have contributed to the problem and where we are now.
100%. Which is why everyone needs to join Here for the Kids. It's my
Absolutely.
plug for the day.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Tahira.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Kaitlin.
As I was sitting here reflecting upon the conversation that I had with Tahira, I happened to notice one of her cards that says, "You're the best gift." And I can't help but continue to think about it is such an incredible gift to have so many different voices on this podcast to talk about how their life experiences have impacted the change that they are attempting to cultivate and are cultivating in this world. It provides me with hope for humanity. It provides me with happiness. And I hope that when you go into this week, you can feel that joy and you can be that gift for someone else in your life because it's needed now more than ever. Thank you all so much for listening to this episode of the Kindness Is podcast. If you love it and it's adding even a little bit of value to your life, we would love, love, love if you could subscribe, rate, and review so we can reach even more people and make this world a little bit more kind.